Modern mental health care isn't broken. It is functioning exactly as it was designed to, and that is actually the problem. To be very clear, in this video, I am not going to be criticizing individual therapists or psychiatrists. I think that the vast majority of them are good people that are genuinely trying to help people. The problem is the institution. In this video, we are going to be talking about the problems that exist within that institution, why they exist, and what you can do to still get good mental health care, even within the system as it currently exists. My name is Sean. I'm a mental health coach. I see 40 plus clients a week. I have a 98% satisfaction rating from over 1,500 ratings, and I regularly help clients find mental health care that works well for them, whether it is in addition to the coaching that they're doing with me, or because we're not a good fit, and so I help them find somebody who is. The current model of things like therapy and psychiatry are not focused on healing. They are focused on helping people to function in society, which is what therapy and psychiatry were originally designed to do, was to help people to function in society. I hear stories from clients all the time about how psychiatrists that they go see are not interested in larger contexts. They are only interested in asking their diagnostic questions and then giving a diagnosis and a prescription based off of that. And that is because of the way that they are trained. So the way that Western medicine works is it is not holistic, it is specialized. So we don't think about the entire human being. We have heart specialists, we have cancer specialists, we have mental health specialists, but like medical mental health specialists that prescribe medication. So it's all very specialized in the way that we approach it rather than taking in the holistic picture. I also hear horror stories from people about, going to a therapist or psychiatrist and the person is suffering with like alcoholism or something, and the best that the therapist has to offer is, cognitive reframing about turning fear into excitement or just doing yoga. And don't get me wrong, cognitive reframing and yoga are both very useful methodologies and techniques. But when someone is suffering from a lifetime of abuse, something like yoga just isn't gonna cut it, at least not by itself. I hear stories from psychology students that are working in prisons that they are trying to empathize and understand the experience of these prisoners. And when they go back to their mentors tell them things like, no, don't worry about any of that, just focus on the diagnosis. A little kid isn't focused and is super hyper, put them on Ritalin. A woman is struggling with painful periods, put her on birth control. A client is struggling with anxiety, that's just generalized anxiety disorder. Just give them a Xanax. Couldn't have anything to do with the, abusive father that they grew up with that made them feel like they were never doing anything right, so they constantly had to think about the future. Just generalized anxiety disorder. The result is that we live in a society that is overdiagnosed, overmedicated, and believe that the misery that they feel in their life is just the way that life is. The good news is that with the connectedness and access to information that things like technology afford us, I don't think that this methodology is long for this world. I think that we are far too informed to continue to tolerate this kind of treatment. And so I think that it very quickly is going to start to improve. And one of the things that I often do as a coach for clients is I help them connect with providers, whether that's a therapist, a psychiatrist, whatever. And so today I wanted to break down some steps that you can take to help you find good mental health help. Now, these are not like theoretical steps that are like ideals. These are things that I have walked my clients through and they have seen good results from. So the first thing that you can do is you can ask for referrals. One of the easiest ways to expedite the process of finding good mental health help is to ask someone who has already gone through all the work and just, copy their work and see the same person. A lot of times when I'm seeing someone, they will have someone else in their life that also could benefit from mental health help. And so I will refer them to one of my colleagues. And if you'd like help finding mental health help that feels right for you, I'll leave a link down in the description where you can schedule a free 50-minute session with me. The next thing is that you can schedule multiple appointments in quick succession. So the sad truth about finding good mental health help is that it is a lot like dating. You have to find a good fit with somebody, a good vibe with somebody. And to do that, it takes some trial and error. But instead of making it so that you spend 6 months with a person and then have to start all over because it turns out that they weren't a good fit, instead, if you schedule 3-ish appointments all in a row, whether that's within the course of a week, a couple weeks, whatever it is, but as close as you can together, then you can very quickly get a vibe on like a free consultation or whatever. You can get a vibe of how you feel about the person. And if you like them, great, you can cancel the other 2. And if you don't like them, then you have 2 others lined up to check out and hopefully find somebody that you like. The third, that the second thing was sort of hinting at, is that vibe is key. So one of the most healing parts about a professional-client relationship in the mental health space is the relationship between the professional and the client. And the reason for this is because of something called transference, which is basically the idea that dynamics that you experience out in your day-to-day life will play out in the room with the person that you're working with. And as you work those things out in the room, it helps you to work them out in your real life. And so in order to do that, in order for that to work, you have to feel safe, comfortable, good with the person that you're working with, because otherwise you're not going to be able to work through those things with the person that you're working with. And one of the best ways to tell if the vibe is right, I have this expression that I really like, which is that the truth is sensational, which means that when something feels right, you will feel it literally in your body, almost like electricity. And so when you are talking with somebody, if you feel a very strong resonance in your body, if you feel electricity in your body, it's a good indication that it's a good match. If it's not a resounding yes, then it's probably a no. The fourth thing is that you're the boss. So there's this natural dynamic that develops in professional client relationships where people sort of view it as like mentor-mentee, and that is actually very harmful to the way that the relationship works. Because when you view it as mentor-mentee, you feel like you need to take their advice. You feel like you need to do what they say, even if it doesn't feel right for you. A lot of times, obviously not always. And what that results in is that the professional that you're working with doesn't necessarily know what is working for you and what isn't. And so instead, what results in really, really good outcomes is if the professional that you're working with says something that hurts your feelings, that you don't think will work, that doesn't resonate with you, tell them. And one of 2 things will happen. Either they will adapt, in which case that's a great sign, that's a good indication, and you can move forward from there. Or they won't adapt and they will sort of be stubborn and set in their ways, in which case it's a good sign that you should continue the dating process and look for other people. The fifth thing is that it doesn't have to be therapy. So in just a second, we're going to talk about something called common factors research in more detail. But just to give you a little tidbit about it, one of the things that they discovered in common factors research is that for something to be therapeutic, it doesn't necessarily need to be therapy. People can get similar outcomes from talking to religious leaders, from talking to friends, family, etc. And finally, the last thing is don't worry about the specialty of the person that you're working with so much. A lot of people are really fixated on that. They're like, I want to find somebody that, specializes in the exact thing that I'm struggling with, which on a logical level makes sense. But the data suggests otherwise. There have been studies where they have looked at all sorts of different factors like gender, ethnicity, shared past experience, all these sorts of things that you would think would contribute to a good match, between a professional and a client. And strangely, what they found was that what actually results in the best match is the adaptability of the professional. And so this sort of calls back to this idea of giving feedback to the person that you were talking with in real time in the room. Because when you do that, if you see that they are adapting to what you are saying, that's a really good sign that it's a good match. Furthermore, with all of these different therapeutic modalities that were coming out, scientists were naturally curious about which one worked best. And what they discovered was that, strangely, they are all equally effective. And instead, it is actually about these common underlying factors that exist across all of them, even outside of therapy, that really contribute to healing. So let's dive into those factors. The first one is a therapeutic alliance. So essentially, feeling like you can trust the person that you're working with, feeling like you're on the same page with the person that you're working with. By having that alliance and that relationship, like I've been talking about throughout this video, it allows you to feel safe in the kind of work that you are doing. The next is empathy, the ability of the professional to genuinely understand what the client is going through and convey that understanding. So if while you are talking to someone, you just don't feel like they get you, that is going to be a huge part of the sort of like diagnosing the vibe for yourself. Does it feel like this person actually understands what it is that I'm going through? The third thing is the client's own strength and resources. In other words, the investment on the client's part. So I work with people all the time, and the people who have the best outcomes are the people that take the work outside of session. When you are willing to put in the work on your end, that is where the best outcomes come from. The fourth is expectancy and hope. Placebo is a very real thing. Recently, they discovered that up to 50% of the efficacy of antidepressants is placebo. So up to 50% of antidepressants making you feel better is because you believe that they will make you feel better. And the same thing is true with this kind of work, that when you are doing mental health work, if you believe that it can genuinely help you, it drastically increases the chances of it actually helping you. The next thing is ritual and structure. So having some sort of regular structure, routine around the sessions, whether that is a regular cadence or regular things that you do in session, that ritual and structure is actually very important for the healing process. The sixth thing is goal, consensus, and collaboration. So essentially being on the same page about what it is that you two are trying to do and how you're going to get there. So obviously, if you two are working toward completely different goals, it's probably not going to result in good outcomes. And if you two are working toward the same goal, but in two completely different ways, it's also not going to result in great outcomes. So making sure that you're on the same page about where you're going and how you're trying to get there. And then the last thing is authenticity. Both parties being genuinely themselves in the room. So if you are working with somebody and they feel cold, clinical, or just not themselves, it's actually a good indication that it might not be a good person to work with. All of this being said, with the way that things are right now, it is genuinely hard to find good mental health help, even when you are feeling good, let alone when you are feeling powerless, depressed, or any number of other things. And so if you would like help in the process of finding good mental health help, I'll leave a link down in the description where you can schedule a session with me. And if we're a match, great, we can work together. And if we're not a match, I will help you find somebody who is, even if that means just sitting together and, screen sharing and helping you to look at listings and send emails, make phone calls, whatever it is. And if when I talked about giving feedback to the professional that you're working with, you were like, oh God, like I could never do that. I could never say no to this person of authority. Then this video that'll either pop up here or down the description, depending on where you're watching this, will go into why it is so hard to say no and things that you can do to help overcome that. Hope that's helpful, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Strength and